Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's installment of LiveWire, which has actually become a weekly installment as of late. So I'm happy there's a lot to show and a lot to look at. This week, we'll be looking at what a multi-factor authentication is and how it can be used to improve security in your applications. Sorry. Wow. Okay. So first of all, LiveWire again it used to be a bi-monthly series. Now it's weekly. We go through use cases and then we do live demos. There's a link to the slides to follow along in the bottom, and I'll write it up in the chat real quick so you can follow along if you don't like to look at. Well, I mean, if you prefer looking at your screen instead of mine, you can totally do that, and also we'll be able in the future. Y/SWMF slides. There you go. So I put a link in the chat so you can take a look. Great. So where do we start? There's a few things to look at, but we'll look at what identity theft is, which is the major problem with that 2FA tries to solve. What multi-factor authentication is, and what the SignalWIre multi-factor API does and how it works. We'll take a quick look at the demo application I built, and we'll do a code dive so we can figure out how to use it. It's actually quite simple, but there's a few caveats that I'd like to show you. First of all, my name is Luca Pradovera. I'm the lead technical evangelist at SignalWIre, and that photo was taken when I was younger. I need a newer one, but I look good, so. Identity theft and online fraud. So there is a lot going on the internet these days between phishing and all of the other attempts and get your data so they can steal something from you or people you know. Identity theft in particular is the practice of getting someone's personal credentials and using them to either utilize the victim's resources directly or commit other fraud, meaning that what people will try to do is get your credentials, so maybe they can get to your credit card, or maybe they can sign up for something, or maybe they can purchase some merchandise and that will be shipped to some address, and then which is not your address, and there's a lot of you can do. Another thing that very often happens is that identity theft leads to other identity theft, because if you manage to steal the credentials for someone who is a say a bank accountant and they're known with their clientele, at that point you're able to reach out to each one of them and tell them, oh, your account mistakenly got debited with $2,000 extra. If you could just cover that, then we'll rectify that in the next week or whatever. And some people will fall for it, and it will be legit because it's coming from an actual bank account email. The call is verified and coming from a bank, etc. So there's a lot you can do with credentials. In fact, in 2020 there were million and 300,000 and change identity theft cases in the U.S. alone, and there were $3.3 billion lost or stolen in those cases. That's a staggering amount. It's almost $2,500 per case, meaning most cases don't lead to much. That means there's some cases where hundreds of thousands are stolen, and it's happening more and more recently because of people using those very useful and very important applications that allow you to save and moving around. So Cash App, Venmo, the saving stuff such as Robinhood, a lot of cryptocurrency going around these days, and all of those are controlled by a single password and not much else. So it's easy to get into them, and by the time the money has been moved out, I'm from Italy. There's a saying that doesn't translate, but essentially it means whoever has the money holds the power, right? So if someone else has your money, you have to go get it back. So it's better to not get it stolen. And the issue has been doubling year over year since 2016, and in 2020 it actually more than doubled, probably because a lot of people were staying at home. They were not doing as much as they were before. A lot of people looked into new services, sign up to new services, and didn't really properly secure what they were doing, either because they didn't want to turn it on or because those services didn't offer any of these extra security options. One solution that's very easy to add and has very good success rate is multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication, MFA for short, is the familiar practice. You've all certainly seen it at work on time or other, to send a secret token to a user who is then prompted to enter the token for verification. When you get those messages like your verification code for is 12345 6, they're usually 6 digits because that's the number that's considered secure yet easy to use. Occasionally 7. Uh, it's used to authenticate, but it's also used as an OTP to authorize transactions or sign documents, which means that you can use MFA for a variety of usages. For example, the e-sign Act in Europe, in the US, and the corresponding act in Europe allow to use MFA so as a one-time password to sign documents. Which is a practice that's been increasing again because you cannot go to the bank, and so the bank will send you the documents, so you have the ability to sign without going there. Tokens usually have an expiration time, so when you get a token, you have a fixed amount of time. That is to make it harder for someone who has partial control of your devices to go and grab your phone and get to the message before you do, or you receive a message and you know where it's coming from. So expiration times are very important in security, and we'll see how to set that, of course, through the API. How does SignalWIre help? The SignalWIre MFA API currently lives under regularized group of API. It's not part of the SDKs yet, but it is. It's going to be soon, and it's documented with curl samples. Plus, we have a blog post, we have a demo application that we'll see shortly, and a few other things. That's really. We'll take a look at the documentation later just to see what the various parameters are. But first of all, just going through a few things. There's a few endpoints which expect JSON bodies, and they have various parameters. So actually, what I'll do is let's take a look at the documentation real quick because that's going to be useful. So first of all, you can request a message either through a text message or a phone call. SMS is more convenient, but is considered slightly less secure because of how messaging is managed. SignalWIre is very secure and won't allow anyone to port a number to SignalWIre without verifications or port them out. But some other carriers have had instances where, and I'm just not just saying this for publicity, it's actually true, we check every request. It is technically possible to grab someone's number and put it under hosted messaging mode, which means their messages will be going somewhere else, but the voice traffic will still be there. If someone did that temporarily, you will probably not notice them requesting an SMS for your bank account, then restoring traffic. So at worst, if a friend sent you a text right in those 10 minutes, what you will say is, well, guess it didn't come through. It happens from time to time, right? So you will notice. Still, if you're dealing with a secure provider such as SignalWIre, it's a very good way to handle security because it's more convenient than a phone call. The various parameters you can set, of course, are the only really required parameter is the phone number that you need to call. You can set a from, which will show the caller ID. What's important here is that it needs to be a number on your SignalWIre account. And there's a caveat here when doing SMS. As probably you know, any account sending SMS recently needs to be registered with something which is called the campaign registry. The campaign registry is something that's been instated by the various carriers to prevent SMS spamming. Effectively, this means that if you want to use your own message from SignalWIre to send verification messages, you will need to do a campaign registration the same way that you do to send other type of traffic. SignalWIre does provide a verified number for you to use, so if you don't specify a from, it will just use that. You can also specify a message, knowing that if you specify the message, you will need to specify your own from number. Why is that so? Because the campaign registry has submit examples for the code that is for the text that you're sending out via XMS. So since SignalWIre has verified its own number, and will will only allow it to go through if the message is the one we verified. Also, this is also to protect SignalWire's number. If someone were to put in something fraudulent or even, I don't know, curse words or whatever, it will be SignalWire's number that gets actually acts locked up. So there's a side question in the chat about Twilio RSF and huge surprise billing. So yeah, it's easy. If carriers don't check, it's easy to do the kind of fraud. Again, SignalWire has instead a very strong porting checking policy that prevents all of that. But yeah, unfortunately, those fraud routes are hard to find out because you're just not getting traffic. You'll notice after a while they can be detected at the system level. We have checks in place. Some other carriers don't. So there's that too. But in general, as the end user, you won't notice. As I said earlier, you will not receive messages for 10 minutes. Friend texts you, then calls you saying, "Hey, Luca, why didn't you respond? We're going out this evening." And you say, "Well, I didn't get it. Sorry." And it happens, so you don't notice, right? It happens that occasionally a call or message doesn't go through. So that's how things are done. Still, dealing with a reproducible carrier is the best way. So, message. Token length is the length of the character in the token that will be automatically generated by SignalWire. Maximum attempts allowed are the maximum attempts that are allowed by the API before the token is invalidated. SignalWire actually enforces that for you, so you don't have to deal with extra fraud. And you have to, for infraud, of course you will have to enable international traffic. And still, we don't send SMS to anything that's not a local number if you enable international. So that should be very much fine. Maximum attempts, we enforce that so you don't have to, and also makes it more secure. Allow alphas allows you to include the letters or in the code still automatically generated, but it will have letters. So ABC 1 to 3. Personally, I think most people prefer digits only, and if you want more security, just add 1 digit. Longer codes are more secure than shorter codes using a larger number of characters because of how the besides, you cannot really brute force any of those because you have a maximum of 3 tries. Unless you set it to 20, 20 tries are not very much. Even if you're trying to, you have only 20 attempts out of, if you're using 7 digits out to 10 million minus 1. Well, 10 million counting all zeros. So you have 20 attempts to get something that has 10 million possibilities. So really doesn't happen. Valid for is important. It is the validity of the token. It's really just relevant because of the again, someone might try to get your phone while you're away, or so you want to set it to a sensible duration. When you make any of those requests, and we'll see that in code in detail, we get back an ID. This ID is what you need to know to be able to verify it. So SignalWire won't actually tell you the code. This is for maximum security. The code actually never leaves SignalWire's platform. It's only known by SignalWire and the end user. And this actually, I know this might sound silly, but it actually protects your end user from you as the application developer. This makes it so that it is impossible for you to actually verify that code the same way someone would with their own phone. Granted, if you have access to the database, you go set the flag to true and be done. But generally speaking, that will show in the database logs, right? So it will show that someone went and changed the data. So not getting the code to SignalWire actually helps. Sorry, not getting the code out of SignalWire, it stays between you and your end user, actually protects your end user from your implementation. So you can claim your 2FA is secure because you're not even seeing the code. You have no ability to pretend you are your user, which is actually quite important. Phone call works pretty much the same way. There's a limit of 500 characters. So I will actually suggest you don't have a 500 characters message to tell people this is your authorization code, because, of course, 500 characters is a page of text. So don't read them the intro to Moby Dick before they get the code. But you can if you like. And the options are the same. When you make a request, you will get back a token, the ID, and your user will enter your token, the token they received, into your application, which you'll then send to the API using the verify endpoint to see if it's valid. Going back to the slides, as we noted earlier, if you specify a from, if you specify a message, you will have to also specify your own number, and it will have to be registered with SignalWIre. As we saw earlier, requesting the token via SMS is pretty easy. I'm just using the to and the from and a message. This is a verified number I have, and this is my that's actually my phone number, so give me a call. And voice call is simpler. Just well, it's the same thing, literally. The only thing that's changed here is call at the end of the request. And verification is very simple also. It's just a post request to the verify endpoint with your own ID in the URL, and it will return success, true, or false. So here's something you might want to know. When you're dealing with this API, you can actually get two types of responses. Success true means the token was validated. So you're okay with progressing with whatever you were trying to get to your user to do. If you get false, the only reason where you get success false is if the token entered is incorrect, which is actually easy to, that helps telling what the actual situation is, because it will return a 404 if the other negative options have happened. So maximum number of attempts have been reached, you get a 404. Because the token is gone, it gets deleted. A timeout won't return anything. Timeout will be you making the request and getting timed out. So you're just doing a curl. If you do a curl request and it times out, means your network is not connected to SignalWIre. And by definition, if this times out, it means generally means SignalWIre hasn't even received the request, so it doesn't count against the attempts. The token is expired, so the expiration time has passed, and you will get a 404. Again, the token gets deleted. There's no way to retrieve token after it has expired. And again, this is again a security measure. There's no way someone can go get your tokens. The token has already been verified. This is, of course, this is another case. If you get a 404, it means the token has been verified earlier, and usually this means that the user has just got an old message. Happens to all of us. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of cryptocurrency going on recently. I do use a couple exchanges, and sometimes I go get the wrong number, really, the wrong message. Cool. So let's go take a look at the application. But first of all, let's run a. First of all, I will put the link in the chat so you can take a look, and then so let's run a call first, and then we'll run the example. Okay, so there you go. The link to the code is in the chat just for your usage, and I'll go here and enter. Oh, sorry, I need to go grab one of my numbers real quick, which I don't remember by name. So I'll do it on my phone so you can hear what's going on. I'll do a voice call. Of course, this application is what you'll see in the repo, so I'll make it a little bit bigger before I press enter. Okay, cool. So let me open Bria, so it's already connected, and speakers on, and volume. Cool, good. So there we go. Okay, this was better.
Your personal authorization code is 7760077.
776-077.
Your personal authorization code is 7760077.
So I'll get it wrong. Last digit was last digit needs to be a 7, right? And I failed verification, and we'll see what that means in the code in a bit. See, there's failed, and then I'll submit the correct code. And so, did I get it wrong? 76077. Okay, cool. Okay, that was correct. I didn't hear it correctly. Great. So what we did here is very simple. Note that, again, the application never actually saw the token, which is the important part. Let's take a look at how we did this. It's super simple. First of all, this is a Sinatra application. Sinatra is a Ruby micro framework. Oh wow! Wait, just let me close this so I can see what's going on the screen. Perfect. Okay, cool. So Sinatra is a Ruby microframework that's generally used to do very simple stuff. Starting from the top, I'm loading the configuration. More on that in a second. We'll loading the SignalWIre SDK, loading Sinatra, loading NetHTTP, which we need for the actual request, doing the URI and JSON and other libraries, and then Sinatra Reloader, which is useful if you're working in development because it will reload the file every time you make a change. We then set up for making requests. As you can see, we're just using basic auth, so converting this to any other language should be quite simple. All you need is something that's able to post a form over basic auth. Just give it the tokens and it will work. And really, all there is to it is here. I'm catching any error and making look like success is false, just so we can. Here you could do if for or if some other error. Great. So how does Sinatra work in general is that it sets up a few endpoints you can call. Get / means if someone uses the get HTTP method to go to the root of the application, send them the index template. Index template is really a super simple form here that has, okay, this is big enough. That has a, it's really very modal. So if there's a verified token present, it will ask you for a 6-digit code. If there's no verified token, it will just get the form in. So the important thing is that the form will just send you the phone number. The actual meat of the application is simply here. It's super simple. If we post / so we're posting the form, if the phone parameter is present, it means we are in the first screen where we saw me enter the number, and all we do is set to 2. I could have done a few other things, right? But I picked the simplest example, so just calling 2. Then I make the request using the mode parameter that was in the form. Mode is either call or SMS. You probably want to validate this in production, but I just did it. It works. And then I store, this is the important part, we store the ID from the result. As we saw earlier, we got a few things back. Most of them you already know, because if we send a request, we'll get back the ID, the from number, which is the default SignalWIRE number in this case, the to number, which you already knew because you know we were sending the authentication to, and a success field, which actually tells you if the call or the message was correctly queued. There's one thing there to be aware of. If the call somehow fails, that's not gonna say success false. So there's a few things there you could do. Maybe check your numbers, or there's a few things. But right now, success will not mean the call was not placed. It will just mean it was not queued because you don't have credit or whatever. It's happened. Of course, so you get an ID. What we do in the view again is we store the ID in a form here, and we also have a field for the code. So we send ourselves back the ID from the form itself. If you notice, it's actually also written down at the bottom of the form. So that's just for debugging, really. So when someone actually enters the code, they will set the verify parameter, and we'll go check the parameter. How? We'll make a request to the ID of the so the URL is constructed using the ID of the request / verify and a payload of the token. Of course, then we'll know by the single parameter that the JSON returned by verify has, which is success, if things went well or didn't go well. Again, this is quite simple. It's deceptively simple. Actually, it's implemented in a way that's quite secure, pretty useful, and I think it's going to be an important asset in building out applications. Note that you could do this again a few different ways. I can do a text. Only this number here is not actually able to receive text because it's voice over IP only, but it will really just get you a message, so it's not very glamorous. It will still work. Okay, so going back to the slides. By the way, the application includes a full Docker. The application repo includes a full Docker setup. So if you don't have Ruby running, but you just want to get going, you can download, you can clone the repo and just run it using the instructions that are in the README. One thing I never show in LiveWires, and I actually want to take a look now, sorry for re-switching, is simply how to configure this. So every application includes an environment.example file that contains a few variables. This one doesn't need many, but it needs a project key and a token from your space. So what we'll do here is I'll go to my SignalWIRE space. The space name is actually what you see up here in the URL, so it's pretty simple. And then you go to API, and project ID is here under the API tokens, and then you just copy a token, which, I mean, it's I can delete later, so I can totally show it to you. I copy a token here, and then that's really it. So that is what you need to set up. Note that if you first sign up for SignalWIRE, you will your account will be in trial, so you do need to either top up your account to at least $5, if I'm not mistaken, or you can use a verified number. So you can verify your own phone number. At that point, you will be able to send 2FA to your account, which won't with your number, which won't be super useful, but maybe someone might want to do it. Question time. If anybody has any question, I'll be happy to fill them either in chat, via voice. I know it's a simple API compared to other things we looked at, but don't underestimate the importance of security in your applications. Again, I've come to the conclusion that any application should include some kind of multi-factor authentication, because at this point we're using so many apps every day in our everyday life that it's almost all of them have a monetary component that people might want to either use directly or use to commit fraud. So it's important to have it. No, out. So we have a Lanny app from last week. Go watch that video. It's on our LiveWire channel. Last week we did some quick. Spam killing by using a voice capture combined with the spam trap called Lanny. Lanny is a set of recordings that sounds like someone that's speaking slowly, and it's leading you into conversation. It says inconsequential phrases, and it's known to lure a scammer into conversations that last up to 10 minutes. So yeah, if you have a question, I'm happy to answer. If there's any other, of course, I'm also happy to answer. Well, you type Lenny does stuff like it will just say yes, yes, yes. So when you're trying to ask, so it doesn't require you to port your number to SignalWIRE. So my recommendation when you're setting up some kind of spam killing app is set up in call forwarding mode. So what I will do there is buy a new number on SignalWIRE. They're very cheap. They're 80 cents per month. And use those for use a phone number and use that phone number as the number you give out to people. It's always possible to port a landline. Yeah, it is. You can port a landline to SignalWIRE, no problem. In which case, you'll gain the ability to do messaging on it if you ever wanted to. But generally speaking, it's you can port it. But my recommendation is always to do having a SignalWIRE number and give that out. If, of course, you're not able to give out that SignalWIRE number, the second best suggestion is any carrier has the ability to do call forwarding. So buy a SignalWIRE number, set up your call, and then set up your number, and then have your existing landline call forward to SignalWIRE, unless the call comes from SignalWIRE, which is something that you can do almost all carriers. So that's that. The fact that we run all calls through SignalWIRE. I'm happy to help. I mean, it's something we could look at. So if there's no other questions, this concludes our. Can a SignalWIRE number receive 2FA SMS? So unfortunately, carriers don't allow voice over IP numbers to receive validation messages. That's not a problem. That's not a bug. That's not something SignalWIRE does. Everybody has the same thing. That is because it's very easy to get a voice over IP number and have it receive messages. So it was being used by scammers again to either impersonate or create accounts on For example, Google Voice, then you could, if you manage to verify a number in Google Voice, then you can do whatever. There's the Craigslist scam when they verify Craigslist ads, so people pay for them and they just keep the money and never send the stuff. There's a lot you can do with a numbers. That's why, generally speaking, all carriers, not only SignalWIre, block 2FA to voice over IP numbers. So 2FA will only work via messaging if you are on a true cell phone. While of course voice will always work. So if you really want to have verification happens on a voice over IP number, use voice, which also applies to the current presentation. Like if your customers have voice over IP numbers, you will need to use voice to verify them. Great. Well, I think that was a good discussion. Thank you for all the questions. Thank you for joining me today. And remember that next week we'll be doing another April 21st. Oh, well. Oh, I undid the change. So let's fix it right there. Nobody saw anything. No, 28th doesn't exist. Cool, done. So on April 28th, we'll have another LiveWire, and we'll look into asynchronous recording and what you can do with recording calls and getting into conversations, coaching people. You can do a lot of stuff with the asynchronous audio features from SignalWIre. So see you next week, and thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Luca. I'm lead technology evangelist at SignalWIre, and today we'll look through our new multi-factor authentication API. Thank you.